Welcome to the second grade Hills Terrace Elementary homework video. We will be covering reading in this video. One of the most important things you can do with your child is sit and read with your child out loud. This image I'm going to be showing you shows you why that this is important. On this image you have James and you have Travis. If James reads 20 minutes per night for 5 times a week, in 1 week he'll get 100 minutes of reading, in 1 month 400 minutes of reading, and in 1 school year, 9 months, 360 minutes of reading. Travis, on the other hand, only reads 4 minutes per night or not at all. He only gets 20 minutes of reading, 80 minutes of reading in 1 month, and 720 minutes of reading in 9 months. Why is this important? Because by the end of the 8th grade, James will have read 28,800 minutes of reading, which is 80 school days. But Travis, on the other hand, would have only have read 5,760 minutes of reading and only 16 school days of reading. So looking at this graphic here, which student would you like your child to be? This is just reading in general. This does not include talking about the books. Which one do you expect to do better in school? Which one will have a better vocabulary because they've been exposed to more words when they've been reading? It will be James, because just by being exposed to all that reading, he will start out ahead of Travis. Okay, now I'm going to give you some tips about reading with your child. Now, this is only for practicing reading together out loud. It is not for pleasure reading. So first, set a time to read and a place to read every day. That makes it harder for you to break the routine and for you to remember and the child to remember. Switch off who reads. You can have them read a sentence, you read a sentence, or they read a page, you read a page. The other thing is that modeling to them how it should sound is extremely important. Showing them how fast to read or how slow to read, how it should sound when someone's excited or when someone's sad. That's the purpose of them hearing you. The more they hear somebody reading out loud to them, the better it's going to get. Don't read a book that is too hard. It's better to read if it's a little easier. Now, again, this is just for when you're practicing read aloud. You can also do another time to read books that are harder, and it's you read to them, because you want to also expose them to harder vocabulary that they may not be able to read yet. But when they do get to that level, they'll have already heard it, and they may know what that word is by that time. And the last one is rereading a book is great for practicing fluency. We are not going to focus on fluency here, but kids love to redo things over and over again, and that's a good thing for reading. The better the more they read it, the better they get at reading it out loud. What if your child makes mistakes when they read? Well, the first thing is don't give them the word right away. I know you want to help them, but that's not helping them in the long run, because then they'll always depend on someone to give them the word when they don't know it. We have been doing things in class to help them figure out the words. So have them use these strategies they've learned. I'll go into that in just a second, what the actual strategies are. And those will also may change depending on the teacher. Prompt them with a strategy if they don't remember. If they say, oh, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, we'll suggest something to them. After fixing the mistake, have them reread the sentence of the page again. Don't just go on, because sometimes that'll help them remember the word if you repeat it again. And then only if they still can't get the word would you give it to them. And if they're getting, depending on the length of the words on the page and the length of the book, if they're getting between 3 to 5 words per page, that's way too hard. But if it's over the book, It'll depend on how many words are in the book. If it's like one line per page, that's way too hard again. But if it's like a couple sentences per page, 5 words over the length of the book may not be that bad. So it'll just depend on the book. If you feel like they're making a lot of mistakes, it's better to err on the side of caution and make them stop and do an easier book. And you don't need to tell them we're never going to read that book again. You can say, well, we'll read it together, or you can say we'll come back and read it later on when you're able to read it again. Okay, so here are some strategies that you can try. The first one is if your child has been to Hills Terrace before in first grade, they should know what open court is. And so some of these, this one may be harder if you have not been here before. And we will be doing this in second grade as well. So, for example, the word chat, we would say the ch together because it's the same sound together, and then we would say the a sound like ah. So we would go ch, ch, ah, and then we would say it together cha. Then we would say cha, t, chat. So now that seems like a lot at first, but it does help them in the long run, particularly when you get to longer words and they don't know what parts of it are. If they break the word apart into chunks like we do in open court, it makes it easier for them. Now we will, like I said, be practicing this a lot, so it may be harder for them at first to do that one. The second way is to have them say the beginning or ending sound. Like if it's chat, do you know the CH sound? Ch. Do you know the T sound? T. So do you know what an A sound makes? And then in this case, you could say what different sounds does A make. A third way is to give them a word that sounds similar, like a rhyming word. So if the word that they don't know is booth, say, well, it sounds like tooth, but the T is taken off and there's a B. So what sound does the B make with the word tooth? Now that one could take a little bit of time because you have to think of a word that's rhyming, and sometimes there's words that do not rhyme with it, so that won't help you. So that is dependent on the word. Number 4, is there smaller words inside the bigger word they can read, or can they cover up parts of it? So for example, on the word called, some students may know C-A-L-L, and so they'll cover up the ED, or maybe it's calling with the ing on the end. So they can cover up the ED or ing, and they'll know call, and then they add the ending sound. Some students may not even know call, so you would then also cover up the C. So you would have like one part of your hand covering the ED and one covering the C. So then they would see the word all. And so then they would say the C sound for all, and then they would add it together. Then they would uncover the ED sound and put it all together. Again, these are things that we're going to be practicing in class. So if you don't understand these, you will need to contact your teacher, and they can go into it a little bit more if you need more help with that. Okay, now we're not just going to focus on just the reading. While that is important, they also need to know that when you read, you need to be thinking about what it is you're reading. And I'm only going to be focusing on if it is a fiction story, because it's a little bit different if it's nonfiction. So if the book is a story, they should be able to do a 5-finger or hand summary. And this 5-finger summary covers the who and the what, would be 1 finger, depending on if it's an animal or a person. The setting, which is 1 finger, 2nd finger, and usually that's at least where it is. Sometimes when it's taking place, like is it in the day or evening or the time of year it is also important. That depends on the story. Like you wouldn't be reading about the beach during the winter time. So sometimes I need to know that. That'll be dependent on the story. So that's 1 and 2. 3, 4, and 5 is the beginning of the story, the middle of the story, and the end of the story. By the end of 2nd grade, and depending on some stories, they should be able to identify a problem to the story and the solution to the story as well. If they can't tell all this to you, have them reread the story again. They should remember most of this without having to reread, but we do allow them to go back to the story, and we highly encourage and require it toward the end of the year to find in the story where those things are when we're doing a test on these things. So having them go back to the story is important, but you would not have them go page by page and tell you everything that's going on the page. That in the beginning, when if they're in the lower, if they're in maybe A through about G, that could be because there's not as much per page. But when you're getting about the H and above, they should be able to tell you without looking at each page, because there'll be too much information on the page. Because we didn't want to make this video too long, these two questions may be in an additional video, or they may be posted as links, but they are important. Where do I get books from? And what are some good books for my child for second grade, or if they're all reading on a different level, what are some good choices for that reading level? So we will go into that in a separate video, or we will send something home, or there'll be links posted somewhere. If you had any other questions, don't hesitate to send them in. We welcome any ideas to add for our homework videos. Thank you.